Lava Blast. Lava Blast. Thunderbolt. Flame Shock. Dratnos, can I get a DPS check on that?
Yeah, 32.
I hate it here, man.
There's no way I only did 32 DPS. Theun, can you check his numbers?
Dude, someone's got to buff Resto Shaman.
All right, I'll get on the phone with John Blizzard. So something that Blizzard did buff, players' HP pools, as they got increased by 40% coming into this recent week. And today, Dratnos and I are joined by Theun Gaming of BDGG, US 2nd, World 400th Guild. He's going to explain and help us explain what the HP changes mean towards healers, because these impact healers the most.
Yeah, crucially, it's not just damage, or not just health, right? It's monster damage too. So
yes.
Our health bars have gone up, but the damage has gone up by the same amount. So basically, healing has gotten less, right?
Yeah, so basically, like the TLDR version of it is you will not be at 100% HP for a large portion of the fight. It's just going to take a lot longer to top people, which I think is good. So
it's a really interesting change to see that Blizzard is actually taking this approach to being able to nerf healers, because it seems like, at least from my perspective, obviously I'm not playing a tank or a healer, so I'm not like super impacted by this, but it seemed like all of the DPS players as well are just like doing too much damage. Healers were able to top players at like pretty much an unprecedented rate for the beginning of a patch, and then it was like, oh, are they going to reduce the amount of HPS? No, they're going to actually increase our health pools. And that was actually really surprising to me to see them address it that way, as opposed to tackling it from like a reducing the HPS angle.
Yeah, I think it also solves like some issues that healing has had for quite a few years now, as like bursty damage patterns has been widely a thing. That's why for the longest time it's felt like it's been like Disc Priest and Holy Paladin. And that's because like Disc Priest does really, really good burst windows of healing. And outside of that, they're not really doing that much. But like this kind of lends itself to some other healers, like Evoker I know does like really consistent healing, Resto Shaman, Resto Druid. The healers that like aren't quite as like bursty and healing, not that they're going to be like favored, but it's definitely going to be like helping them out a little bit more than like before, when you went from 100% HP to 10% HP inside of Power Barrier, and then your Disc Priest topped you again, and then you were just kind of chilling at 100%. So yeah, I think it solves a couple of other issues on top of also nerfing healer power, which is nice.
So from a tank perspective, Dratnos, whenever they say in this blue post, whenever damage mitigation abilities and healing are too strong relative to player health, the only way to threaten players is to make enemy damage very high and spiky. I mean, this also relates to tanking as well. I mean, tanks are also impacted by this a decent bit, because the amount of damage mobs are doing has also gone up.
Yeah, so any source of like self-healing that was flat based has been nerfed, which means most of the healing you're receiving from your healers and many tank self-healing abilities, although not all, a lot of tank self-healing abilities look at a percentage of damage taken recently and heal based off that. So those are effectively unchanged. They've kind of gained in power relative to healer healing. So that's good news for specs like Blood Death Knight, that, you know, Death Strike has basically gotten a relative buff here because everything else has gotten nerfed. And then, yeah, damage reduction effects, more valuable now as well, right?
Okay.
Because reducing 3% of the raid's damage taken is more valuable now that the raid is taking more damage, right? And the healing is less. Anything that like the big AoE raid heal evoker thing, Rewind, right? That's another winner in this as well. So
Yep.
yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting change. It really is. It comes like, you have to think about it a bit. The easiest way to think about it really is just like any flat healing has gotten nerfed here. That's what's happened. That's the easiest way to think about it.
I saw Revival was like some meme ability now, doing like 26k health per target whenever you have like 250k HP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about DRs for a little bit. Are Holy Paladin and Disc Priest not just getting like really like the best end of this whole entire situation because they provide generally the most amount of DRs to the group?
Yeah, so DRs, like Dratnos said, are still really, really good. You can still reduce the damage, like the spiky damage that you're taking, which will just leave less to heal. So you'll just you'll be at a higher HP threshold. That way, your cooldowns will actually be able to top you. So that will still be true, and like it's not like the end of Disc Priest or Holy Paladin. Those are still very good specs. So plan to see multiple of those in the Race World first, probably. But I think like if you don't have those, unlike before, where like so Kel'Thuzad spikes blowing up, if you didn't have DRs there before, you kind of just died. Now, I'm not saying that won't be the case, but like it's at least less likely probably because you just have more HP. So
Well, I don't know. I mean, like crucially, they also buffed the damage by 40%, right?
right,
So like
yeah,
you would still get one shot if the damage. So like they also need to make the individual abilities less spike, like less lethal, right?
right, yeah.
And that's not part of this change, but the theory, I guess, is this enables them to do the mechanics that way, right?
Yeah, and this is actually something I don't want to like leak too much here, but like I have seen less bursty damage on these fights. Like I was watching Grim Totem earlier. We just got done testing that, and although there is a lot of damage in that fight, it wasn't like a 100-0 hits. It was just multiple like 20% of your HP at a time.
Yeah.
So if they keep damage patterns like that instead of these really bursty, use all your DRs at the same time to live, then I think this change is going to go like a long way towards fixing some of the healing issues that we've had.
This makes mana more of a limiting factor for a lot of healers now, right? Because you have to spend a lot more mana to top individual players.
Yeah, so I had like two main concerns with the change that I think they definitely need to monitor. Mana was definitely one of them. So you're probably spending more active time healing, which means your mana bar is going to go down much faster.
Okay.
That was something I heard from like almost every single healing spec today was my mana felt really bad. So that's definitely something they need to like keep their eye on, because if it comes to a point where you're just having to utilize like a million different boomkins, which we don't like those in the raid anyway, just for like innervates and stuff, that doesn't feel great. But on the contrary, being at 100% each or 100% mana for the entire fight isn't great either. So
yeah,
something they need to watch. And the other thing was like the passive damage that you add. So because you're probably not going to be at 100% HP for these long periods of time, like we have been for a while, the passive damage specs. So once again, Disc Priest, Holy Paladin, Mistweaver as well. Right now, they are going to be adding a lot more damage than some of the specs that have to do like active DPS in order to contribute anything, because they're going to be busy healing. So those are like the two big concerns with the change, I think.
Overall, what are our thoughts? Overall, pretty positive change. A really interesting way of designing it, or do you think that it's, I don't know, do you think there's more problems than it solves?
From a healing perspective, I think it's really good. I'm like really eager to see how it plays out in farm as well, because a lot of people know like tanks and healers don't really have that much fun in farm. Maybe this solves that. Who knows? So yeah, I think it's a really good design decision. It's something really good to try for a patch. If it doesn't work out, they can always go back and maybe just nerf healing instead. But from a healing perspective, yeah, I really like the change.
Dratnos, any thoughts?
Yeah, I also think it's again, like I think it is crucial that they also make the abilities not one shot you anymore, as like that is step 2 of this. But provided they do that, I think this should make healing more also, and they make sure that the tank self-sustain, they double check to make sure that's still good, because some tanks definitely are relative winners or relative losers here, depending on how much you were relying on that throughput from your healer.
Okay. Yeah, we also don't like killing tanks. Just let them heal themselves. So
retweet.
All right. Thank you so much, Theun, for helping explain healing and what this healing change means. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so through the magic of editing, now it's just us, and we're here to talk about the Creation Catalyst.
Yeah, those are some great points raised by Theun earlier, but now we move on to our Creation Catalyst segment.
Yeah. Okay, so for those who don't know, the Creation Catalyst, it got changed in data mining last night, and then it got data mined on Wowhead, the changes, and then now Blizzard has come out and kind of clarified what these changes are going to mean, right? So what is the biggest thing that you think is changing about the Inspiration Catalyst?
I mean, it's pretty much the same as it was before, except instead of getting your 1 weekly charge of it automatically, you have to do an account-wide weekly quest. And then otherwise, it is identical. It's not like there was some worry that it was going to be account-based charges, and so the more characters you'd have, the less you'd have per character, right?
Yes.
That isn't true. You basically have like a set amount of charges that increases every time you complete this quest, and it's like a weekly quest, and that gives you a charge to all of your current and future characters on your account, and they can each spend those charges individually. So it is functionally identical to the way it was last time, except in order to earn that, like instead of getting that charge automatically, you do this quest to get it every week.
And it caps at 6. I think that's also something to note.
I mean, this blue post doesn't say anything about that.
It capped at 6 in data mining. Maybe it won't actually cap to 6. Okay, the blue post does not clarify that it will cap to 6. So maybe that's a reach on my end to assume that it will.
Yeah, I'm also not sure. Yeah, maybe it will stack up at 6. Either way, the like a charge of a limit of 6 stored up at once is pretty functionally infinite as well, because
Sure.
It's very hard to use more than 6 and then need to use a 7th and not be able to not have had time to complete some quests to refill that, right? Like we're talking about a character that's like you need to be catalyzing like normal tier and then needing to catalyze heroic tier and then needing to catalyze mythic tier within the span of like a couple of weeks, which is not impossible, but it's a rare enough case that I think even if it did stop at 6, you wouldn't run into that in almost any normal cases. It would be something you'd have to think about if you were in that case of turbo speed prepping a new character. And basically what you would want to do then is just be careful with the early charges and make sure you don't spend them on stuff you're planning to replace very soon.
So the only real downside that at least I see with the Catalyst now after these changes is people who are coming late to the patch or to the game who don't have these charges banked up in any meaningful capacity. So say you jump in on week 6, or additionally people who are not able to complete the quest every single week for whatever reason, say you're off doing something. This system negatively impacts them relative to the other system. I think that's kind of a safe assumption, but it's not like super negatively impacting. You can catch up. It kind of sucks if you have to grind out a bunch of a few weeks. You know that you have to wait a couple of weeks before you can even start catalyzing gear if you do come back to the game a few weeks into the patch. I've seen a decent amount of people giving Blizzard feedback on this. Did you have any other thoughts about it realistically?
Yeah, I mean, so it is a nerf to either returning players or people who've missed a week. Yes, I guess I think it's not the end of the world for that to be happening, but I wouldn't. I think a good change to mitigate that would be just you know how they like kind of let some of these systems kind of bank up charges, right? Like basically, I think it would be good if you could just run this weekly quest however many times, like until you were caught up, right? Like I think that would be a good fix to that. But I don't know, like if you are coming to the patch late and the catalyst isn't like charged for you, and then you have to charge it yourself. I guess I do not like that. I do think that people coming back in late should be able to get their tier, because like it's just I don't mind like working to get your gear and your tier and stuff, but it's just like it sucks being behind for a month because of that, right?
Exactly. I don't want you to have a 4-week gate just because you decided to play the patch 2 months in or whatever, right? Or 3 months in.
I don't mind making people do stuff to get the gear, but I think the time gate being something that gets like loosened for returning characters or people who've missed a couple weeks, like I do think that would be good. But yeah.
Cadence is notably still on the Shadowlands cadence, like they talked about. So after like
once per week.
Yeah, no. I meant like week 6 of the after the raid has opened, 6 weeks after that, then the Catalyst will unlock. I saw a lot of people talking about that. That's one of their biggest gripes with the Catalyst. It seems right now is that it, at least to them, just unlocks super slow. It's such an interesting dilemma to have Blizzard on one end trying to make sure players aren't having tier so fast, whereas the players themselves are like, oh, I don't really want to play the game being down my 4-set in any meaningful capacity if other people have their 4-set at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely I understand the angst of not having tier. I do also understand that Blizzard doesn't want to just give you tier on week 1, right? They want it to be something. They particularly want the content that gives tier to be something that people run to get tier, right? And if you have the Catalyst working on week 1, then that stops pulling people to do the raid, right?
Yeah. Well, Do people really need incentives to do the raid? I guess is the question.
I mean, especially with the way M plus gearing works now at the item level, like yeah, if there wasn't tier from raid, I'd be running M plus for the first few. Like that would be the way to gear you guys.
That's actually true. That's a good point. I don't know. I think overall it's interesting to see them change the catalyst to be more interactive. I think it's a better approach to the catalyst in general.
Yeah, I mean it is basically just them nerfing the catalyst a little bit, right? Like it's the same if you're doing this weekly quest, or it is worse if you forget a weekly quest or if you are returning later in the patch. But I think it's a reasonable thing to add rather than just having the charges accumulate automatically. Like I think if you want to have weekly quests that are tied to power in the game, this is the kind of thing that I like for it, rather than some of the stuff that, you know, Corthia and the Maw were doing.
I would like to think that it's a buff to the catalyst because I don't have to grind Cosmic Flux anymore.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I guess there's no currency for it, so this is instead of the flux. Is this? Yeah. So I guess in that sense, there's like if you ever didn't have enough flux to catalyze, this is nice. Although the reason you didn't have enough flux to catalyze was usually because you'd made legendaries with it, right? And that wouldn't have happened either.
It was ridiculous. Anyways, yeah. All right. Big shout out to Theun. Thank you so much for coming and helping us out. Talk about the HP changes. Anything else you have to say, Dratnos, on today's video?
Nope. That's it for us.
All right. We will see you guys in the next video, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Adios.